This shouldn't be happening. Just a few years ago, Apple staged one of the most successful escapes in corporate history, breaking free from a declining Intel to forge its own destiny with Apple Silicon. The world watched as Apple soared and Intel stumbled. The story was over. But now, the impossible is happening. A reunion is happening, and it forces us to ask a question that defies all logic. Why would Apple, after winning its independence so decisively, even think about going back? Forget everything you think you know about this story. This isn't a reunion. It's a takeover, a calculated power play, orchestrated by Apple's next generation of leaders to solve a problem created by its own success. This is how Apple turns an old rival into a new asset, securing its reign for the next decade. By the end of this video, you'll see the strategic genius behind the deal that nobody saw coming. The Declaration of Independence. For years, the story was simple. Apple, the design genius, was held back by Intel, the faltering giant. Apple's solution was to build its own path with Apple Silicon, a move that revolutionized the entire PC industry. The M-series chips were more than just faster. They were a declaration of independence. Now, just as that new world order has settled, Apple is rewriting the rules again. To be clear, Intel is not designing chips for Apple. Think of Apple as the master architect with the brilliant, secret blueprints. Intel is now simply the high-end construction company hired to build the house exactly as specified. Specifically, entry-level M-series chips will be built on Intel's most advanced process node, called 18AP, at its new fab in Arizona. This isn't just a supply chain decision. And while the deal was closed under Tim Cook, it was announced just weeks after John Ternus, Apple's incoming CEO, who takes over on September 1st, 2026, was named as his successor. The timing is no coincidence. This deal reflects exactly the hardware philosophy Ternus has been building toward for years. And if Ternus gets his way, this is just the beginning. Sources suggest future generations could expand beyond entry-level Macs, potentially covering iPhone chips and the server silicon powering Apple Intelligence. The foundry relationship Apple is building today may be the foundation for everything it wants to build tomorrow. The divorce that changed everything. To understand how significant this is, we need to look back. For 15 years, the Apple-Intel partnership defined personal computing. But behind the scenes, the relationship was fracturing. Intel's chip roadmap was plagued by delays and manufacturing stumbles that constrained Apple's product designs. By 2020, Apple had had enough. At its Worldwide Developers Conference, the company announced a 2-year plan to transition the entire Mac lineup to its own custom chips, Apple Silicon. It was a public and humiliating breakup. The M1 chip, launched later that year, was a triumph. It delivered staggering performance and battery life, proving that Apple's integrated hardware and software approach was the future. The M series evolved, leaving Intel's offerings in the dust. Apple had won. They were free. On May 8th, 2026, the Wall Street Journal reported that Apple and Intel had signed a preliminary chip-making agreement. Intel's stock jumped nearly 14% that day, hitting an all-time intraday high of $130.57, surpassing even its dot-com era peak. Here are the fundamentals of the deal. Intel will act as a foundry for Apple's M-series chips. This is critical. Intel is not designing anything. They will simply build what Apple tells them to. The scope is initially limited to entry-level chips, like the base M series destined for future MacBook Airs and Mac Minis. The manufacturing will take place on Intel's cutting-edge 18AP node at its facility in Arizona, a fab heavily subsidized by the U.S. CHIPS Act. So why did this deal happen? And why now? The answer lies in the motivations of both companies, which aligned perfectly. For Apple, the problem is success. On the April 30th, 2026 earnings call, Tim Cook pointed to supply constraints on advanced nodes as a primary bottleneck. Think of it this way. TSMC, Apple's sole chip partner, is like the hottest, most exclusive restaurant in the world. For a decade, Apple was the VIP who could always get the best table. But now, the AI boom has created a new, hungrier guest, Nvidia, that is booking the entire restaurant for its massive parties. For the first time, Apple has to wait in line. This creates delays and limits their ability to meet demand for Macs and iPads. For Intel, the motivation is simpler: survival and validation. Under CEO Lip Bhutan, who took over in March 2025, Intel has embarked on a costly strategy to become a world-class foundry. It's like a legendary rock band opening a state-of-the-art recording studio. That plan desperately needed a win. Landing a superstar like Apple to record even a few of its tracks in their new studio proves to the entire music industry that their equipment and engineers are world-class. This is bigger than a supply deal. This deal is more than just a solution to a supply problem. It is a multi-layered power play with huge geopolitical and strategic implications. First, there's the American angle. This move aligns perfectly with the push from Washington to onshore critical manufacturing and delivers a massive victory for the CHIPS Act. For Apple, it's a powerful PR shield. It's like a home buyer getting a massive government rebate for hiring the local contractor. By building millions of chips in Arizona, Apple becomes a champion of American manufacturing, insulating itself from future tariffs and geopolitical tensions surrounding Taiwan. It also gives Apple tremendous leverage, allowing it to get quotes from two different contractors, Intel and TSMC, driving down costs for everyone. Second, this deal perfectly expresses the John Ternus era that is coming. Ternus, the incoming Apple CEO, was the key leader behind the transition to Apple Silicon. His philosophy is clear: design in-house, fabs fungible. He believes Apple's true power comes from controlling its own silicon destiny. A deal like this is the ultimate expression of that vision. Apple would maintain absolute control over the chip's architecture, while treating the manufacturer, whether it's TSMC or Intel, as a commodity. Apple isn't undoing the break from Intel. It's completing the victory by turning its old supplier into its new employee. So what does this mean for you, the user, and for the industry at large? The most immediate impact will be on product availability. With an additional source for tens of millions of chips a year, Apple can finally meet demand more consistently. It may also lead to more stable prices for entry-level Macs as Apple leverages the competition between its two giant suppliers. For the industry, this is a significant shift. It legitimizes Intel's foundry business and puts real pressure on TSMC for the first time. However, there are real risks. Intel's yields on its most advanced nodes remain a known concern. Intel's own CFO acknowledged they are not where we need them to be yet. If Intel can't meet Apple's notoriously high standards for quality and performance, the deal could create a bigger headache than it solves, and Apple must avoid a chipgate situation. Think of giving the same secret cookie recipe to two different bakeries. Even with identical instructions, one bakery's oven might run hotter, resulting in slightly different cookies. Apple needs to ensure that every chip, regardless of which bakery it comes from, performs identically, or customers will notice. In the end, this Apple-Intel reunion is not a story of forgiveness. It is a story of power, strategy, and vision. Apple, facing a supply crunch created by the AI revolution, needed a second source. Intel, desperate for a lifeline, needed a marquee customer. But it is the vision of Apple's hardware leadership, a vision of total silicon control, that turns this mutual need into something much bigger. Apple isn't going back to Intel. It's putting Intel to work. By diversifying its manufacturing on its own terms, Apple is securing its product pipeline, gaining massive geopolitical leverage, and setting the stage for the next decade of Mac innovation. What do you think? Is this a genius strategic move by Apple, or a risky bet on an old rival? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this analysis valuable, hitting the like button and subscribing really helps the channel grow. Thanks for watching.